So the South African State Theatre has been defrauded of more than 20 million rand, allegedly by its own staff. The employees are said to have manipulated the banking system and transferred funds into their own accounts. All of this is said to have happened over a 5-year period. Here to talk more about this is the theatre's chief executive, Sibongiseni Mkhize. Mr. Mkhize, a very good evening to you. Thank you for coming on. So,
thank you.
It would appear that your most fascinating drama has not been happening on stage, but in your offices. How did all of this happen?
Well, at this stage, we don't know about the exact modus operandi in terms of how did they do it. But what I can share is that we were alerted by the bank that we use to say there's been some suspicious transactions taking place, and although they could only access records for over a period of 5 years, it's possible that this went on maybe for 6 or 7 years. Hopefully, once we are done with our forensic audit, we'll be having a better idea of exactly how it happened, who else was involved other than the officials that have confessed, and also how much exactly was stolen from the people of South Africa.
Just on the timeline, if this alleged crime had been going on for 5 years plus, was this the first time that the bank, ABSA in this case, flagged that there were suspicious transactions?
Yes, it was the first time, because I can assure you and the people of South Africa and all the viewers is that if it had been brought to my attention earlier or any time since I joined the State Theatre in November 2015, I would have definitely taken action just like I have done now.
It raises the obvious question, though, of how it happens that employees, possibly with outside help, were able to defraud the State Theatre of a sum of 20 million plus over 5 years undetected.
Well, your systems, your processes, and everything that you do to try and strengthen internal controls, all those things are as good as the people that you have appointed. If you've got people with criminal minds within your structure, they will always find ways of circumventing your policies and systems. And that is what has happened in this case, because this has happened for this long, and it doesn't mean that during that period there were no internal controls or processes, audits, internal, external. Also, we have our own systems in terms of how we do things within the State Theatre. I remember in 2015 we even had appointed a company that was going to actually investigate our cash and bank to check is the money not balancing at the end of the financial year, and they couldn't pick up anything. In fact, when the bank informed us about this, they said it doesn't matter, even if you had read every piece of paper, and you would not have been able to pick it up. Because
at the core of this, the staff who are said to have been involved in this crime were in your finance department, and the allegation at this stage is that they manipulated the banking system. Is that how they got around the audits and the like? Yeah, well, I'm hoping that once we are done with the forensic investigation, we'll have a better idea of the modus operandi, because for me that is key to making sure that it never happens again. But when your systems are undermined by the very people that are supposed to help you or strengthen them, you really have a very little chance of being able to detect any kind of fraud, because in any organization, the people in the finance department, we rely on them, we trust them, and we believe that they share the values of the company. And in this case, we have discovered that actually those individuals who have been especially in that department for a much longer period than any other people had been doing this, but also they had abused the trust that other people had in them because they had been there for much longer periods. How many people are we talking about? At this stage, we are talking about 2 people, but I have reason to believe that this is the work of a much broader syndicate. There might be other individuals involved, not only at the State Theatre, but maybe at other entities. But also, there are individuals whose accounts were used by our staff members. And when I explained to the general staff, I said there might be people who benefited as friends and as relatives and whoever. And I believe that I think the long arm of the law will be able to reach out to each and every person that was part of this syndicate. So it's 2 officials from the finance department? Yes. How high up in the department were they?
No, they are not high up in the department. It was people who are clerks at a very junior level, but they were able to manipulate, because once things are manipulated at that level, what comes to me or what comes to the CFO usually is everything that looks like it's authentic, documents looking like they are in order, but in reality, things had been manipulated at that level where it becomes difficult to pick it up.
But Mr. Mkhize, it speaks to a failure of systems, because the higher-ups in their training, part of it I would expect is to be able to pick up anything that looks irregular. And when you work with money, at least to my knowledge, you don't take everything at face value.
Well, it's not the case that people were taking things at face value. And in as much as everyone is trained to pick up those things, like I said, the criminals will always find ways. There will always be a step ahead. In this case, we're talking about an institution that had already made good progress in trying to turn itself around and also improve its audit outcome. So it doesn't mean that there were no systems and processes or that there were no internal controls.
These are just flawed systems.
Well, that's why we have reason to believe that there might even be people with expertise in or the technical knowledge of banking that might have been involved who are not the employees of the state theatre.
That's the point about the syndicate that you believe was involved.
Yeah.
Is this a syndicate that you think is working beyond just the state theatre?
Well, we think that I think it's people that maybe found friends or collaborators at the state theatre. I don't know where else they are involved, but I think my interest is to make sure that those people who defrauded the state theatre are made to account for their actions. We have already opened a criminal case, because for me it's not just a simple disciplinary matter, it's a matter that actually we want to see people behind bars.
Are they arrested currently?
Well, we did open a criminal case on the 23rd of January, and last week we met with the police investigators, and we have been putting some pressure on them, because these people do not deserve to be walking freely while they've done what they've done.
How has the loss of about 20 million rand impacted on the running of the state theatre and its business?
Well, it has impacted in the sense that when we look back, we realize that we actually achieved more than what we thought we had achieved. So that has been the painful part about this, because we're applying pressure on our staff to saying, no, you are not achieving, when actually they were not achieving, but the work of the state theatre will continue.
Sibongiseni Mkhize, CEO of the South African State Theatre, thank you so much for being on Nightline tonight.